Judges chapter 11, verse 1. Jephthah delivers Israel. Now Jephthah the Gileadite was a mighty man of valor. We've heard this before in Genesis about the mighty man of valor. He was the son of a prostitute, and Gilead was his father. And Gilead's wife bore him sons who grew up, drove Jephthah out, and said to him, "You shall have no inheritance in our father's house, because you are the son of another woman." So Gilead impregnated a prostitute, even though he was betrothed. He had sons within his marriage, and then he had a son outside of his marriage with the prostitute. He was a bastard. So Jephthah fled from his brothers and settled in the land of Tob, where worthless men gathered around him and traveled with him. Now this verse 3 is so powerful because, one, it gives a location, the land of Tob, which was what we call southern Syria. So it was like the fringes. And then it said, where worthless men gathered around him and traveled with him. Now, if you know the cultural history of Tob, southern Syria, like it was, I believe, north of Jordan. So it was like a fringe area where exiles go. It was a mixed multitude of people. It was filled with mercs. Now, for those who don't know, those are guns for hire, or back then swords for hire. They were nomadic, and it was a mishmash pot of paganism. So there were Aryans there that worship Moloch, the storm god, Baal, and a lot of these pagan gods that they worshipped in Tob required ritual sacrifice, because they had the gods of appeasement. The angry gods sacrifice for appeasement, to appease the angry god. So this 3 is very important because it gives you the people that Jephthah grew up around, the culture he grew up in, and the religion in that culture, and the people he grew up around. Keep this in mind, okay? He was not a religious man. He was outside the covenant. Starting at verse 4. Sometime later, when the Ammonites fought against Israel and made war with them, the elders of Gilead went to get Jephthah from the land of Tob. "Come," they said, "be our commander so that we can fight against the Ammonites." Now the brothers didn't come get him. The elders did. Jephthah replied to the elders of Gilead, "Did you not hate me and expel me from my father's house? Why then have you come to me now when you are in distress?" Because they were mercs and they were sword salesmen. They were for hire. They were bandits. They were like thugs. Verse 8. They answered Jephthah, "This is why we now turn to you, that you may go with us, fight the Ammonites, and become leader over all of us who live in Gilead." But Jephthah asked them, "If you take me back to fight the Ammonites and the Lord gives them to me, will I really be your leader?" And the elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, "The Lord is our witness, if we do not do as you say." So Jephthah went with the elders of Gilead, and the people made him their leader and commander. And Jephthah repeated all his terms in the presence of the Lord at Mizpah. Then Jephthah sent his messengers to the king of the Ammonites, saying, "What do you have against me, that you have come to fight against my land?" So it wasn't his land in the beginning, and it still isn't his land. They hired him and said, "If you do this, we'll do this. We'll let you rule over our people and become leader." The king of the Ammonites answered Jephthah's messengers, when Israel came up out of Egypt, they seized my land from the Arnon to the Jabbok and all the way to the Jordan now. Therefore restore it peacefully. Jephthah again sent messengers to the king of the Ammonites to tell him, this is what Jephthah says. Israel did not take away the land of Moab or of the Ammonites. But when Israel came up out of Egypt, they traveled through the wilderness to the Red Sea and came to Kadesh. Then Israel sent messengers to the king of Edom, saying, please let us pass through your land. But the king of Edom would not listen. Edom's refusal. Israel asked politely to pass through, and we'll see this in Numbers chapter 20, verse 14 through 21. Edom had said no and came out with a large army. The reason being is Edom saw Israel as a threat. Israel was also huge, hundreds of thousands of people. And letting a massive population march through their land could be seen as surrendering control. They also sent messengers to the king of Moab, but he would not consent. So Israel stayed in Kadesh. We see Moab refused. Moab had already been terrified of Israel because of what happened in Egypt. We'll see that in Numbers chapter 22, verse 3. So Baal-like, king of Moab, even hired Balaam to curse Israel, remember? They saw Israel as a destabilizing force. Then Israel traveled through the wilderness and bypassed the lands of Edom and Moab. They came to the east side of the land of Moab and camped on the other side of the Arnon. But they did not enter the territory of Moab, since the Arnon was its borders. And Israel sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who ruled in Heshbon, and said to him, please let us pass through your land into our own place. Sihon, king of the Amorites, also refused. We'll see that in Judges chapter 11, verse 19 through 20, where it says Sihon did not trust Israel to pass through his territory. Sihon did not trust Israel. Okay? There was a lot of mistrust with these kings. That was the issue. Sihon was known as a warrior king. He assumed Israel's request was a military attack because, once again, they did not trust Israel. He preemptively attacked Israel rather than risking letting them near his cities. He would rather keep them away than let them in. Sihon would not trust Israel to pass through his territory, so he gathered all his people and camped in Jahaz and fought with Israel. There was this pattern. Everywhere Israel went, it was trouble. Is it the same today? Look at the news. Everywhere Israel goes, it's trouble. And I'm not talking about the people. I'm talking about the government, the state of Israel, because New York has the second largest population of Israelites against the state of Israel and the Zionist control. So you have different factions, and most of these factions do not agree with the government. The people that make the laws, that enforce the laws, that keep the laws. They don't agree with the system. That's different from the nation, the people. Verse 19. And Israel sent to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who ruled in Heshbon, and said to him, please let us pass through your land into our own place. But Sihon would not trust Israel to pass through his territory. So he gathered all his people, encamped in Jahaz, and fought with Israel. All these kings had a problem, and it is mirror to the same situation we're having today. I kid you not. It's crazy how nothing new is under the sun. Verse 21. Then the Lord, the God of Israel, delivered Sihon and all his people into the hand of Israel, who defeated them. So Israel took possession of all the land of the Amorites who inhabited that country, seizing all the land from the Arnon to the Jabbok and from the wilderness to the Jordan. So this is where I have a problem with scripture and the semantic overlaps of it, because we tend to credit everything to God In a relative sense, that can't be possible. When people get murdered horribly, or babies die at the hands of criminals, and all these terrible things, these pedophilia, human trafficking, we can't say, oh, this was because of God or the God of Israel. In the relative, we tend to credit when we're doing good to God, and when we're doing bad, we don't credit that to God. We credit it to Satan, because we have this polytheistic belief. Even though we claim there's only one God, we tend to credit the other God. Now we're polytheist. We believe in multiple gods, just like the pagans. So I can't look at this with all truth and say this was the hand of God, the God of Israel. I think these people have a sense of superstition, and they would credit when they're doing good or victories to God, but when they're doing bad, they don't credit them to God. And a perfect example is King Cyrus. King Cyrus, according to scriptures in the KJV version of the Bible, which means King James Version. Okay, that's what KJV means. That's his version of the Bible. It says Cyrus credited his victory to the God of the heaven and the earth. And people interpreted it as Jehovah or Yahweh. But if you read the Cyrus cylinder, Cyrus credited his victory, his war victories, to Marduk. Marduk was his God. So why did King James in his version put the God of heaven and earth? I don't know. And the Cyrus cylinders, which is written in cuneiform, predates the King James Bible and the written Bible. And he was an open worshiper of Marduk. So when King Cyrus credited his victory to Marduk, why did we read in our Bible, King James Version, why did he put in his versions the God of the heavens and the earth? And then we interpret it as the God of Israel. But you see how little subtle things in translations can change the whole context of the story. And I bet you guys didn't know the Cyrus cylinder existed, and it predates the Bible. And that Cyrus credited Marduk, his God. But you don't have to take my word for it. You can look it up. It's public information. It's not hidden. That's why archaeology is very important, and anthropology. We can't just rely on this as the source of information. So not every Lord that they're claiming in this Bible is not the Lord. You can translate it, but that might not be the intention of who they actually meant. In verse 23, it says, now since the Lord, the God of Israel, has driven out the Amorites from before his people, Israel, should you now possess it? Do you not possess whatever your God Chemosh grants you? So also we possess whatever the Lord our God has granted us. Jephthah was not a worshiper of the God of Israel. He didn't even grow up in that environment. He was not a covenant keeper. He was not in the covenant. He was outside the covenant. Are you now so much better than Baal-like, son of Zippor, king of Moab? Did he ever contend with Israel or fight against them? For 300 years, Israel has lived in Heshbon, Eror, and their villages as well the cities along the banks of the Arnon. Why did you not take them back during that time? I have not sinned against you or trespassed. I have not trespassed against you, but you have done me wrong by waging war against me. May the Lord the judge decide today between the Israelites and the Ammonites. But the king of the Ammonites paid no heed to the message Jephthah sent him. I am going to break down their reasons for not letting Israel pass through. And they are very good reasons. And then we actually see how this administration today, right now, is practicing what these other kings were trying to portray or relay to him, why they didn't want Israel passing through their land. Jephthah made the vow to the Lord, if indeed you will deliver the Ammonites into my hand, then whatever comes out of the door of my house to greet me on my triumphant return from the Ammonites will belong to the Lord, and I will offer it up as a burnt offering. Not every Lord in this Bible is the Yahweh God or the Tetragrammaton Jehovah. Okay, we need to understand this. Just because you invoke the name Lord does not mean you have the intentions of the Lord.